There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I am your host, Stephen Grant Rogers, and I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Yeah, I'm pretty sure those are words I'm never going to get to say again, or at least never in a serious setting, so that was a fun episode. We're going to get to that. We're going to talk about the latest episode of Marvel's What If, which really changed things. I mean, if that was right out of left field. But we're going to get to that. We are definitely going to get to that. First, though, I thought I'd cover a bit of the news. If you guys are up for that. This one's kind of interesting to me, as I know a couple writers and people who have worked on the Friday the 13th franchise. Todd Farmer, who wrote Jason X, and also Adam Marcus, who's a friend of mine, who wrote and directed Jason Goes to Hell, or at least he directed Jason Goes to Hell. I think he might have wrote it as well. So the Friday the 13th franchise is, close to my heart in that sense, but well, it turns out the rights have been in dispute for a while now. The writer has been suing the producer, claiming, trying to get the rights back. And it turns out it's going his way. Writer Victor Miller is on the verge of actually getting the rights back to the iconic character. The fight for the rights has been between Miller and film producer Sean S. Cunningham, who has claimed that the original script was written as a work-for-hire project for the Manny Company. I didn't even realize it was called the Manny Company, and the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit disagrees, ruling that Miller was Manny's employee for the Copyright Act purposes and is entitled to authorship rights. One moment. Now, this is big because there's a lot of properties and stuff that are work for hire. And for the fact this is a 1980s property, this might trickle down into other areas, other characters, other franchises, other IPs, and might even other mediums. We're going to have to see how this falls out. Now, the fact that this issue has been in court has been the biggest roadblock for any new films being made. The franchise originally started in 1980 and ended up with 9 sequels or follow-up movies. Then there was also Freddy vs. Jason and a reboot in 2009. Now, Miller only worked on the initial film, and he is known for not having seen any of the sequels because he's disappointed in the franchise making Jason the villain. Because if you remember in the actual original film, Jason's not the killer. His mom is. So the whole idea of Jason becoming this psycho killer doesn't happen until number 2. In number 1, it's all about, his mom's the one who's the killer. So it's kind of weird, but so everything after that changes the mythos that Victor Miller created. I got a quick story for you, JD, on that. So it's interesting. If Miller gets the rights back and then starts progressing forward with it, will he want to continue the story with the mom as the serial killer? Or will he stick with Jason even though he didn't like that? That's going to be probably the biggest thing to come out of it. Well, that and the copyright issue. But all right, Jason X. This is a fun, quick story. I worked on the 30 Days of Night series, the comic series, with Steve Niles, and I co-wrote one called Dead Space, which we basically sent vampires into space. I was at a convention in San Jose, California, hanging out with Todd Farmer. Todd is a screenwriter and a comic writer and a really good guy. I like Todd a lot. And we really hadn't met that much, hung out that much before, but we had mutual friends. So this was the first night he and I really got to hang out. We went to Korean barbecue with some other people. And at one point, he was just giving me crap about the fact that I'm doing a 30 Days of Night now comic series, and I'm putting vampires into space. He is telling me that, you know what? You know you've jumped the shark in a horror franchise when you put the characters in space. And he went on and on and on, just busting me about putting vampires in space. And then it suddenly dawned on me, he put Jason in space before I put the vampires in space. And as soon as I said that, he started busting up. He's like, you finally remembered. So, yeah. So the guy who put Jason in space gave me crap for putting vampires in space. Yeah. Jason X, he just wants his machete back. But then Jason Goes to Hell was really good too. So, and I'm not a big horror fan. I did sit down and watch Freddy versus Jason, because I got a call one day from Avatar, and they had secured the rights to Friday the 13th and or Nightmare on Elm Street, and they wanted me to pitch a storyline, but it was going to be set in the Freddy Jason universe. So I had no Nightmare knowledge. I'd seen some Halloweens. I'd seen some Friday the 13th. I hadn't really seen that many Freddys. So I drive up to Best Buy at the time, and this was long enough ago that Amazon wasn't the first thought for anything. And we get there, and they have the Freddy versus Jason movie. And they have a box set. And what William over at Avatar told me was, just watch the first movie in Freddy versus Jason, you'll be fine. Well, they had the first movie in Freddy versus Jason. I could buy them individually, or I could buy this huge box set. My wife at the time, who's a huge horror fan, insisted I buy the box set. And I'm like, I don't need to see all of them. I don't need to spend the $120 for the box set when I can buy the individual. So I own a box set of Nightmare on Elm Street, but I'm divorced. Go figure. All right, let's get on with the news. Another interesting thing, speaking of horror, is Disney Plus released the first look trailer for the new R.L. Stine series, Just Beyond. Now, this, of course, is based on the graphic novel series that Boom Studios put out. And I got to tell you, the trailer really looks scary. There's some real horrifying moments in it for a book series that's basically for children. Now, the series is going to be 8 episodes long and will drop. All episodes are dropping on the 13th, from what I understand. Now, the project was originally announced back in 2020, and we know the Lego Batman writer Seth Grahame-Smith is on board to script. And the executive producers on it are kind of interesting because it's David Katzenberg and Stephen Christie and Ross Ritchie, who are both from Boom. Well, Stephen Christie used to be from another, but now he's part of Boom, and Ross Ritchie. So, you know, good on Ross. Good for him. R.L. Stine is also executive producing. But I was really surprised by how much it looks like a horror thing. I mean, I remember seeing the Goosebumps trailer with Jack Black, thinking, "Oh, that's cute. It's just little, you know." This felt more like a horror trailer, so I thought that was pretty interesting. D&D fans, I happen to be one of them. I am a DM, which is kind of weird for me to say because I didn't grow up playing Dungeons and Dragons how like a lot of people my age did. I actually didn't start playing until I got a call one day from Matt Hawkins over at Top Cow going, "I'm putting a group together. Would you like to play?" And I'm like, "Sure, absolutely." And that's when I learned to play. And then a year later or so, I ended up DMing a group, and then 2 groups, and then 3 groups. And now I'm going to be starting a group with Matt Hawkins and some other comic people and non-comic people. We'll be kicking that off next month. But if you are a fan of the insanely popular web series Critical Role, it's going to be coming back with their 3rd campaign starting on October 21st. Now, I know when I got involved, campaign 2 had already started. So I tried to go back and watch campaign 1, couldn't get into it, but quickly got into campaign 2, and I watched a bunch of it. But then, you know, I'd get behind and try to catch up. I'd go back and try to watch it from the beginning. So this is a chance to jump in on a whole new campaign. They're going to be all new characters, and the show is just fantastic to watch. It originally started on Geek and Sundry, but the popularity of the show grew so much that they launched their own channel, and then they had a Kickstarter a couple years back for an animated adventure of their characters from the first campaign, which broke all the crowdfunding records. Originally, the records were held by MST 3000. And then when they ended the campaign and found out that they had broken the $2 million mark and all this other stuff, Joel from MST 3000 was on the show with them to celebrate, which I thought was cool. Now, the series is, I mean, if you don't know the series, it's basically a group of voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons, and they would do this on their own, and eventually they decided to start filming it. And the group is Matt Mercer is the DM, and you've probably heard his voice. He's the voice of McGee in Overwatch. He does a bunch of animated voices. They all do a bunch of animated character voices and movies and stuff. But it's also got Mersha Ray, Travis Willingham, Laura Bailey, Taliesin Jaffe, Ashley Johnson, Liam O'Brien, and Sam Riegel. Now, most of them, you're going to hear their voices. You know them from stuff. Travis Willingham and Laura Bailey are both part of the Marvel Avengers video game. Liam O'Brien and Sam Riegel do voices for the Bad Batch. All these people. But Ashley Johnson, you may recognize. She was the waitress that Captain America saves in the Avengers movie. And she's been a regular on Blind Spot for the entire run of the show. So these are all you sit down, you watch them. Matt Mercer is a great DM. He does amazing voices. They all do amazing voices, but that's the whole their job. But he creates this whole world. It's all an original campaign, and he's put so much work and effort into it that D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, actually got him to make a book of the universe that he's created, the world he's created, so you can play in the world that they play in. This little group, friendly game has grown into this monolith with huge number of followers. It's pretty amazing. If you haven't caught Critical Role, but you're a fan of D&D, tune in on October 21st on their website. Or if you are a fan, it turns out they've made a deal with Cinemark, and the premiere episode is going to be simulcast in theaters in 20 different cities across the United States. So you can actually go see them on the big screen. They also sometimes do live shows at conventions, and that's always a huge hit. So, like I said, if you haven't checked out Critical Role, now's your chance to jump in and get involved easily. All right. I got one more bit of news that actually ties into, what's this here? I'd say that's a little overkill if I didn't see Riff Tracks live in theaters. Yeah, no. If you get a chance, there's a couple live episodes on YouTube. The first one that I really got into was watching a live event and seeing them with a live audience and how intense the audience gets, how involved the audience gets. It's just hilarious. You'll bust up laughing through a majority of it because these are all very funny people too. It's not a very dour or somber thing. It's hilarious. So if you get a chance, check it out. But if you can watch some of the live broadcasts of the adventures, that's a lot of fun. I'll look up and maybe next week I'll have some to recommend if anybody's looking for it. The episode we're about to talk to about What If had a secret Easter egg in it, and it's what I did at the top of the show. There's a scene where Ultron's in front of a video screen in Times Square, and on the screen is one universe's version of Steve Rogers swearing in as President of the United States. Well, it turns out that's an Easter egg for a pitch that writer A.C. Bradley did that got rejected. What if Captain America was elected president? Now, this is a premiere that was a premise that had actually been done in What If way back in the day. It was number 26, and it was written by Mike Barr, and Herb Trimpe and Mike Esposito did the artwork. Herb Trimpe. But Bradley's take on it was completely different. And she was on the Deadline's Hero Nation podcast, and she was telling how her version of it would have been an homage to Aaron Sorkin's The West Wing. So it wouldn't have been some big battle, because I know in the comic he is elected president, but then sacrifices himself in a battle with the Red Skull. And I mean, it was a neat premise, but what Bradley wanted to do was actually make it like West Wing. She wanted to have analogs for some of the characters from the actual show, swapping in, like maybe Black Widow is the C.J. Craig character. Bucky becomes, the Bradley Whitford character, things like that, or he's the Secret Service guy. And she would even have the famous walk and talks that you see on any Aaron Sorkin show, which is kind of his trademark. Now, Bradley loved this idea so much that she pitched it twice. She pitched it for season 1, and when it got rejected, she pitched it again for season 2. But she kind of finally has given up and understands that the reason it was rejected is that if you're going to do a Sorkin homage, it's going to be a heavy dialogue-driven episode. I mean, that's the thing with Sorkin. He writes this amazing dialogue, but it's a lot of dialogue, and people are delivering it. They're doing the walk and talks just so there's some motion, something for them to do while they're talking. And that's really not going to work for an action-based animated series. But at least she got to give the little nod to the concept in the background of the latest episode. I thought that was really cool. And so it's kind of neat to hear more and more what stories get rejected and why, because it doesn't sound like they really rejected a lot of them. And I got to say, on this one, I kind of agree. I think it would have been a difficult premise to pull off as an animated feature. Just there would have been a lot, like I said, a lot of talking, and that would have been a little strange. Having people walking, because I don't know about you, but it's kind of, the walking and talking thing is kind of rough anyway. Animated features don't seem to have great walking. I saw somebody complaining about that nobody knows how to draw people walking in animation anymore. All right. Before I jump into the actual episode, I am going to bring up one thing, and this has to do with gaming. There was a trend online for a while of people doing certain games as pacifists. World of Warcraft was one of them. There was a group called the Peace Corps, and it was a bunch of gamers who decided they were going to do a walk and to level up their characters without killing. And the fact the game is called World of Warcraft makes you think that it would be very difficult to do this. Well, a couple months back, Lisa talked me into trying this. And I just wanted to give an update because I've mentioned this once before. We hit level 25. Now 60 is the top. 30 is when your characters get to fly. And I think once you get to 30, things are going to be a lot easier. But it's been a slow trog to get to 25 without actively killing things. Now, I will admit we're not perfect. We got a couple deaths. We did kill, it turns out if you kill rats, they count. We didn't mean to, but there's a particular quest you have to go on, and you have to click on rats and then summon them with a flute. And if you click on them wrong, you kill them. So, and then some of the characters have an aura about them that will damage creatures when they attack you. And if they're a low enough level creature, they attack you and die. And so we have 7 kills. But 7 kills in 25 levels is, I think, pretty good. And just between you and I, they were all Lisa's kills. I didn't kill any of them. I'm still a pure pacifist. It's just because I was teamed with her. So, yeah. But, yeah, pacifists are still going good. Level 25. I don't recommend the experience, though. It's kind of weird. If something attacks you and dies, that's not your fault. Exactly. Not our fault that it's too weak to handle attacking something. That's like when your girlfriend punches you and hurts her hand. Not your fault. You were just standing there. Not your fault you've got big bones, right? All right. So, okay, we are at the 23-minute mark. Let's go ahead and tell you about the rest of the lineup for today. Right after the show here, we have Talking Shop with Miss Jen, and she will be talking to Sean E. DiMattei about Hollywood and comics. Then at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, we've got the classic show, What's in the Box? And once a box of Marvel, DC, or indie comics hits the Space Cadet warehouse, magical things happen. It shows up on What's in the Box. That's where Miss Jen just randomly opens a box and we see what's inside of it. And then at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, we are going to do a post-it review. We're going to do we're going to rerun the Danny Fingeroth interview that I did, where we talk about his book, An Amazing Life, the story of Stan Lee. It's got a better title than that. I'm mixing it up. But yeah, A Marvelous Life, the Amazing Story of Stan Lee. That's it. And yeah, so I had a great interview with Danny Fingeroth. We're going to be running that again tonight at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But between me and them, or me and me again, will be Miss Jen twice, once Talking Shop with Shawnee DeMatte, and then What's in the Box. So stick around for that. Let's go ahead. Why is your girlfriend punching you? Because I'm a smartass. Sometimes I say things that get myself in trouble. Yeah. I'm going to give you an example. Now, this isn't. No, I'm not going to give you an example that would get. I'm going to give you an example. There's a Facebook trend right now where somebody says, I slept in my Rolling Stone t-shirt and I woke up wanting to paint the door black. You know, and it's supposed to keep going, and you're supposed to say the band's name on the t-shirt and then a line from a song. And I wrote, I slept in my Dexy Midnight Runners shirt and I woke up with, and I probably shouldn't finish that sentence. And that's exactly what I wrote. And yeah, she thought that was, yeah. And if you know the song I'm talking about, you know why I got punched. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and roll commercials now. And then when we come back, we'll spend the rest of the show talking about what if Ultron won. Be right back.
Today's comics market is ripe with new titles by creators who are determined to get their books into your hands. My name is Henri Compen. For the last decade, I've been making and selling my own creator-owned comics and dealing as a collector in live sales. My signature series, Yi Sun Shin, is the book that cannot be defeated in battle and has over 250,000 copies in print. Now I'm taking comics to the next level and laying the groundwork for my fellow creators to get their voices heard so they can connect directly with you. This is your chance to engage live with top comic book talent and get your comics signed without having to wait in long lines or pay any fees. But remember, we only have a limited amount of their books in stock, so always remember to call it as you see it.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey. And behind every page, there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
I guess we're back. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. Today we are going to talk about Marvel's What If Ultron Won. So let's go ahead and run the spoiler banner. And put the spoiler thing up here. There we go. All right. I don't know why you keep doing that, JD. But it's not Rex, so it's Dan. And all right, it was a Tuesday night, Wednesday's episode. Wednesday's episode was different. For everybody, when the show started, I remember saying that I felt like it was connecting everything. And I had a couple of people come out and say, they're not connected. Obviously. Oh, I've seen 3 episodes. It's definitely not connected. And I'm like, no, it really does feel like they're building to something else. There's some kind of connection going on. And I think we absolutely see there's a connection going on now. Because we got the episode with the Watcher last week. And this is going to be confusing because the Watcher sees Ultron come through the portal and surprises him at the end of the Thor episode. But is surprised again in the new episode, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are some things about this series that don't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of contradicting of established rules, like the Infinity Stones don't work outside of their own universe. Now that might not be something. I'm trying to think, because now that it pops in my head, maybe that isn't the rule for the MCU. Maybe that's just a rule for comics. Because all we know is that the Infinity Stones don't work at the TVA. Did they ever actually say they don't work in other galaxies or things? Someone pointed out to me, put it on screen, JD. Someone pointed out to me that the Time Stone did work in Dormammu's Dark Universe in the MCU. Yeah. So maybe it isn't the fact that they don't work in other universes. Maybe they don't work at the TVA. Just like magic doesn't work at the TVA. There's this dampening zone there. That might be it. That might be what it is. Now, I mean, because we're all going, oh, wait, it's not supposed to work, because in the comics, they don't work outside of their actual universe. So that's why you couldn't jump to another universe to get the stones. And we assume that's why they had to do that for the time travel, because they couldn't go to it, but maybe they didn't realize there was multiverses. I mean, the first time they mention it is actually in Spider-Man Far From Home. So it's possible. So maybe we're just assuming, and you can have the stones work in different multiverses. Hopefully they'll give a nod or, explain that, or at least come out and confirm that. Because it is kind of tough. I mean, it does feel like they're kind of overriding rules and changing things as they go. But it might be that we have taken what they've given us and extrapolated on it into these rules that don't actually conform to what Marvel doesn't plan to conform to. That's one way to look at it. So, at the end of last episode, we saw Party Thor getting the date with Jane, turning around and seeing Ultron and his drones, or whatever you want to call them, stepping through into that universe. And the Watcher was surprised. But we start this episode, and it's the story of that Ultron. And how, the Avengers didn't steal the body he was making. He was able to put himself in the body with the Mind Stone attached. Which makes you wonder, could he not just attach the Mind Stone to it had to be a synthetic body. Is that what it is? But he couldn't just put it onto his Ultron body. But once he was in the Vision's body, he became real powerful and started taking over. And then, of course, Thanos showed up, which I thought was interesting. And Vision immediately recognized him and his threat and sliced him in half with the Mind Stone. Just zip, perfect split. Complete balance, both sides. Thanos would have appreciated that part of it. And that's how he gets all the stones. Thanos had already done all the legwork, had gotten all the stones but the Mind Stone. So there he was. He was there to get his last stone, and Vision just took him out like that. Which then makes you wonder, if he could do that with the Mind Stone, why didn't our Vision do that when Thanos showed up? And even if he didn't want to zh him off up the center, couldn't he have just cut off his arm? Wouldn't that have saved a lot of problems? Yeah. Wanda, stop. Don't remove the Mind Stone. I've got this. Let's take the gauntlet, put it somewhere safe. We're going to go to New Jersey and have a life. End of the MCU. Solved. Like that. Nope. I just find that funny. So, all right. So this episode's kind of interesting because we've had this great plethora of actors coming back and doing all these characters. This particular episode, though, probably has the most fill-in voices compared to all the other ones. Normally it's like, well, we got 7 of the 10 voices back, but we had to fill in for these 3. Or we got 8 of them back and 1 didn't come back. This one, you've got Jeffrey Wright as the Watcher. You got Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton. Benedict Cumberbatch shows up at the end as Doctor Strange. Arnim Zola, Toby Jones. That's it. Everybody else is a fill-in. Lake Bell is doing the voice of Natasha. Mick Wingert is doing the voice of Tony Stark, who he's done throughout the series. Alexandria Daniels is doing the voice of Carol Danvers. Josh Keaton is doing Steve Rogers again. And this one I actually found to be the most interesting casting. The voice of Ultron, and he's not trying to do the Paul Bettany voice, and they would have gotten Paul Bettany if that was the case. They're doing the James Spader voice, but doing the James Spader voice is actually Ross Marquand from The Walking Dead, who is the guy that came in and replaced Hugo Weaving as the Red Skull in the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. So they got the guy who came in to fill in for Hugo Weaving to also fill in for James Spader. That's got to be an interesting little, mark in your book there. He had been weakened by Corvus Glaive, maybe. That's possible. That's not a bad thought. But he still had the Mind Stone. He could have just zipped off the arm. Or off the head, because you always go for the head. But, yeah. Turns out Vision could have solved this easy, no problem. But, yeah, so we get all these different voice actors coming in. But you don't really notice because they're really good. And Tony Stark has like 1 line. Or maybe 2. Steve Rogers has like 1 line. Carol Danvers has a little more. But we haven't seen Brie Larson as Carol Danvers quite as much as these other characters. So we don't have that voice as much. And then she only comes in and says a few things as well as she fights Ultron. And the guy doing Ross Marquand does a pretty good James Spader voice. Plus, it's him as the Vision. So you go, oh, well, his voice probably changed a little going into the new body. Yeah. So voice-wise, it was pretty good. I didn't have any problems with the fill-in voices. They all did a good job, admirable job. None of them were so off that I went, wait, that's not Tony Stark. No. They were all good. But the story is on this, on this Earth, like I said, the Avengers never steal the body. Helen Cho never stops it. So the Vision, or Ultron gets into the Vision's body, becomes incredibly powerful, is able to hack into the nuclear launch codes, and launches all the missiles, killing a lot of people. They kind of make it seem like they killed everybody because Hawkeye and Natasha were in a Quinjet at high altitude when it happened, and they seem to be the only two left alive. They're at least the only two humans we see. Though, if that's the case, I don't know. But that's all we get. Now, their mission is, Natasha believes that their way of stopping Ultron is to find another AI that they can upload into the hive mind and fight on a digital level, I guess is a way to look at it. And since they don't have the Jarvis AI anymore, or the one that became self-aware, conscious, they're going for Arnim Zola because she ran into him at Camp Lehigh, and that one was destroyed. But she had heard that there was another version, and they went to Moscow and Russia's hiding place for stuff, and they're searching through all this, trying to find that. But it's like a post-apocalyptic world. They're constantly running from Ultron drones. And Ultron, of course, is traveling out, and he's destroying everything. So where he thinks everybody's off Earth, he knows there's a couple stragglers. He's hunting them down with his drones, but he's off destroying Xandar and Ego and the Sovereign and killing Captain Marvel and all this stuff. And he gets to a point where he thinks he's done. He thinks he's killed just about all life in the galaxy other than a couple stragglers. And he's having this little existential moment that he doesn't have a purpose anymore. And of course, the Watcher is our narrator for the story and is talking about this and talks about that moment. And that's when Vision goes, "Who said that?" And turns around and looks at the Watcher, basically becoming aware that the Watcher is there. He's actually hearing the Watcher's narration, which is real fourth wall breaking, kind of creepy weirdness, That's like if you're watching a recorded TV show and you say something and the TV answers you. That would be really weird. Well, that's what happens. And that's when he realizes there's multiverses and that there's other things out there. And he starts figuring that out. And with with all the different Infinity Stones that he got off of Thanos, he can break through the multiverses. So this, of course, freaks out the Watcher, who's on the verge of breaking his oath, but he's not. And if you ever wonder why the Watchers take an oath, at least in the comics, early on, before they took their oath only to watch, never to get involved, they were trying to help a society advance. And in doing so, the society ended up killing itself with the technology, wiping itself out. So from that point forward, the Watcher and the Watcher people, the race, took this vow to never interfere, to never get involved, just to watch. So that's why he has this oath. And he's almost ready to break it because now he's afraid of this Ultron. Because this Ultron has the ability to break through the multiverses. He could start causing huge amounts of chaos. And he knows that there's a way to stop it. And he's trying to urge, Hawkeye and Natasha to find it as they're looking through this Raiders of the Lost Ark type warehouse of information. And Hawkeye is just defeated. He's done. He's lost his wife. He's lost his kids. He's lost most of his teammates, all of S.H.I.E.L.D. All that's left is Natasha. He doesn't have much to live for anymore. And he's looking at this warehouse full of random boxes they have to search through. And he literally pulls on the one with the information they need and then gives up. And the Watcher, who is not visible to them but is there, is like, no, wait, don't give up. Humans don't give up. They always find hope. You've got to get back up. And Natasha's been going through boxes, and at one point she finds Red Guardian's version of a shield. And she puts it on her back and is kind of joking, and Hawkeye's like, no, don't try to make this funny. Don't try to make this fun, And then she ends up grabbing the box that he had just left and finding the file on Arnim Zola, and that there is a backup of his consciousness or his program. And it's at the Russian super soldier program's base, which we saw in Captain America Winter Soldier. It's where the big final fight is. So when they go there and they find the Arnim Zola, Arnim's like, you probably have many questions. And Natasha's like, no, I know all about you. I've made a copy of you. He's like, well, why would I want to help you? And she's like, dealing with a megalomaniac because we can fry your laptop here. And eventually he gives in. And they download him onto one of Hawkeye's tech arrows, shoot it in the eye of one of the Ultron drones, and it uploads, and Zola takes over one of the Ultron drones. But they kneecap it so that he can't run away, which seems like a bad idea once they're trying to run away and they're having to carry him. And then we get this big scene of them being overrun by these Ultron drones as they're trying to get out. And Arnim Zola is trying to upload to the hive mind, which would be the main Ultron, so he could do this battle. And it's not in range. It's not anywhere in the galaxy. And that's because at this point, it's broken through into the Watcher's area, into the Watcher's space, and they start fighting. And we get this humongous fight between Ultron and the Watcher. And while I know the Watcher looks basically like an alien bobblehead, turns out he can kick ass. He's very powerful. He can create energy shields. He's got all the cosmic energy. And for fans of comics, Kirby crackle all over the place. Those little dots, we were looking at cosmic energy on the nth level. But as they're fighting back and forth, and Natasha and Hawkeye and Arnim Zola in the Ultron trying to get away, Hawkeye ends up sacrificing himself in a move very reminiscent of the Vormir, where Natasha sacrificed herself. But it is probably one of my favorite panels. It's almost like a still shot where they stop it. As Hawkeye drops, he turns to fire this nuclear warhead of an arrow. And if he really has one of those in his quiver, then the clip from the Hawkeye trailer where he's like, definitely not that one, that's the arrow. Because it just explodes, taking out the silo and everything. And Natasha and the Ultron barely get out of there. All the other Ultrons are destroyed, wiped out. Hawkeye is, of course, no more. And by the way, if you're someone who doesn't like watching Avengers die, this is not the series for you. Because it seems like this is like Thomas and Martha Wayne level, how many times we're seeing characters like Iron Man die just over and over and over. Well, of course, we see a bunch of them die here. We see the Avengers die. We see Captain Marvel die in a battle with Ultron. We see Ultron try to take a bite out of a galaxy in a very Galactus-type move, though Galactus is only big enough to eat one planet at a time, and Ultron was taking out a solar system, or the Milky Way galaxy. Yeah, so it's pretty crazy how much power this character gets with all of the Infinity Stones. But the Ultron is still, or Arnim Zola is still around in the Ultron, and Black Widow and he get away. And they might be the last hope, because I think the idea is to still get him uploaded into the main Ultron. But it ends with the Watcher having to run, because Ultra Vision, I guess we'll call him, starts punching the Watcher through multiverses. And we're seeing every punch he goes through another multiverse. There's one where it all takes place in where New York should be, but we see one where New York is actually taken over by Wakanda, and then taken over by the Skrulls, and then still in medieval design and stuff, and just over and over. And we see all the different versions of what that area could have become. And finally, he escapes by going to probably the last place anybody would look for him, in that teeny tiny little purple ball cocoon thing that Strange Supreme created at the end of his episode. And of course, Strange shows up, and he knows things are going bad, and he actually makes Uatu say, "I need your help." He forces him to actually say it. So obviously, next episode is going to be the pulling together of the team that Uatu picks to go after this Ultron. And we've seen in the clip that it's this version of Doctor Strange. It's Party Thor. It's the Black Widow we just met in this episode. It's T'Challa Star-Lord, Captain Carter, Killmonger, Black Panther. There's a version of Gamora in it that I'm not sure where she's going to come from, because we haven't seen her yet. Gamora and the Guardians of the Galaxy all die in the Ultron universe when he goes and destroys the Sovereign. They were there trying to defend the Sovereign. So we got one character in the little spin around, and there's a good chance the zombies are going to be used as well, because there is that clip of Party Thor going, "Zombies, great idea." So this is getting interesting. Now, in a discussion I had with JD earlier, he thinks this is going to be the first of a two-parter, that the final episode will actually carry over into the start of next season. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they'll try to wrap it up all in one. Now, this may be the longest episode, but because a half hour is a lot. I mean, there's a lot to clean up in only a half hour, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a longer episode. But I don't think they'll carry it over, because I guess we always knew that they were going to do a second season, so maybe, but I don't think they'll carry it over. I think they'll end it on, it may not be a happy ending, and it may leave some threads, but I don't think it'll be a clear, two-parter, if that makes any sense. And I actually hope that it's not. I hope they take out this Ultron, because I kind of like the idea of what if being separate stories. Having them all connect together like this. It's interesting how they do it, but it feels a little rushed to me. It feels like we could have done 2 seasons and had this be the end of season 2. I didn't think they necessarily needed to do this in season 1. Establish that these are all individual shows, or episode, or universes, and then pull them together as a big surprise. doing it this early kind of takes that away. So hopefully then if they wrap it up, then season 2 will be more individual episodes. Because having them all connect seems, I don't know. And I guess it's not all of them. I don't know if, I don't think there's anybody coming from the one where all the Avengers were killed by Hank Pym. Oh, maybe they do. Maybe they bring in Hank Pym. Maybe the way to destroy Ultron is the Thanos move from the, Yellow Jacket flies inside of the body. So while Arnim Zola is attacking the programming, Hank goes inside and just explodes out of him. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know. But it was a pretty interesting episode. It had some interesting twists. And now I'm really curious to see how this is going to end and where this is going to go and what, if any, it's going to tie into the MCU, into the main universe. Are any of these characters going to show up in the live action? I mean, how mind-blowing would it be if they're fighting and a handful of them burst through a wall or a barrier and land live action in Doctor Strange's basement, and he's standing there like, what the hell? Wouldn't that be awesome? If they suddenly, Haley Atwell in the Captain Carter costume, maybe a couple other characters like that. I think that would have been that would be fantastic. I don't know if they'll do it, but wouldn't that be a huge surprise? That would just break the internet, I think. But all right, guys, we are going to wrap it up there. Remember, right after this is going to be Talking Shop with Miss Jen as she talks to Sean E. DiMattei. I'm sorry, Sean, for getting your name wrong. Talking about Hollywood and comics, followed by What's in the Box, and then we're going to repeat our Danny Fingeroth interview I did for our Post-it Note anniversary. It's a great interview. You guys definitely want to stick around for that. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Tuesday. Good night, everybody.